Western Kentucky University has redefined the college library experience with the Commons, transforming a once conventional space into a vibrant social hub. Today, the Art of Culinary Spaces explores how the Commons seamlessly integrates functionality with a contemporary design that encourages interaction and fosters a sense of belonging among students and faculty. Please welcome FCSI member Armand Iaia as we delve into this remarkable transformation. Armand, welcome to the show this week, and I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule to talk about your project that was in our Project Showcase magazine from FCSI, the Americas. As everybody knows, this week we're talking about the Commons at Helm Library at Western Kentucky University, and we've got the consultant Armand Iaia joining us today. Armand, before we get started, though, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Armand Iaia, and I've been a consultant designer at Senior Little for, well, they told me the other day, about over 35 years. I have designed a lot of high-end hotel projects and several college and university projects. The one at Helms Library was really special because we were using an existing structure that they wanted to retrofit to an addition to the existing library building. So Gensler brought our Senior Little team so that we could help them create a program initially for the food service operation, and then take that program and convert it into actual designs that could get built.
What was the, I'm always curious about what was the project timeline from when you got involved, and potentially, you don't have to know exact number, the budget plan at the beginning, and did the project timeline or the budget have to change significantly during the beginning to the end?
We were able to keep it pretty well on schedule. I mean, because we started the job early enough that the university was keeping us moving right along to get things done.
Yeah, obviously, in the article it talks a lot about it. You all did the research. You were brought in as a management advisor prior to the design, even, and this whole project, Foodservice, was obviously a major component of the Commons. So, how did you and Cine colleagues determine the scope and the nature of the food service program,
Well,
along with WKU, what was needed and how much was needed?
the university was moving some buildings that were on another side of the campus, and in those buildings they had food service operations. They realized that they wanted to move those food service operations over towards this new addition to the Helms Library, because they saw this as being an area that was going to be developed for further student buildings. And so they felt that having these food service operations in this building was going to be a distinct advantage and something that would benefit the college as a whole.
Well, I was going to ask a little bit more about it, because so this building at one point was a gymnasium, then it was a library annex, and now it's
Yes.
another refit or retrofit. So what were some of the architectural challenges you had to face? Because I can't imagine a building that was built as a gym, then a library, and now we're going to turn it into a multi-use building, including 3 floors of food service. What were some of the challenges you faced in retrofitting a building that was constructed in 1931 of all times?
There were several challenges because, we had to determine the overall structure of the building, what it could support, what we could not put in certain areas. The engineers were pretty adamant as about where things, where we could route exhaust ducts in and out of the building. And there were also issues with the floor plate, because I remember the architects, who were wonderful to work with, I should say, that just determining the load that we could put on these floors, because, as they said, buildings done in 1930s were not as robust as
Yeah.
what you might have in a
Yeah.
building today.
Yeah.
So there were limitations about what could go where. It took a lot of hands on meetings where we just sat there around a table and say, well, what if we do this? Can we shove this over here? It was a lot of just work together to determine what we could do.
Nice. Let's expand a little bit more about the exhaust system because there's a couple things that Western Kentucky wanted to be very clear about in their goals, and one of them was the exhaust, and that was, you're still kind of a library adjacent. You've got a little bit of everything going on, and they didn't want a lot of cooking smells going throughout the entire building. So that's a big, as we all know, exhaust systems are sort of a second thought for most operators, but obviously they were very adamant about that. But I can imagine with three different places, you had to have some big challenges to keep those smells from permeating out into the area.
When we started thinking about exhaust ducts, I was pretty sure I wanted to bring in Halton because, first off, they are right down the road from Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I knew that they would be able to handle the issues we were going to have. Uh, so that was a good decision because we worked very closely with the people at Halton. Uh, they wanted to know what kind of cooking we were going to do. And I had to go work with the people at Aramark to determine, okay, what do you need to have for the food preparation you want to serve? So all of those things taken together made for a successful exhaust project. And we were also able to utilize Halton's energy savings program, with their
Yeah.
Marvel system so that we were able to ratchet down exhaust hoods when they were not being used. Because we know in situations you're not cooking constantly. There
Right.
are ups and downs. And why should you, run full exhaust when you don't need to?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, exhaust wasn't the only thing, and smells weren't the only thing they wanted to keep out. And being,
Nope.
again, adjacent to a library, they wanted to keep the sound to a minimum, which is another thing. When the
Mm-hmm.
food service operations, you've got cooking, coffee shops, espresso machines, everything. How how were you able to accomplish trying to keep the sounds to a minimum when it comes to food service?
Well, the architects did bring on an acoustical engineer who
Okay.
helped us to mitigate the noise factors and vibrations that some of
Okay.
the equipment was going to produce. They advised us of how to put insulation underneath some of the legs of the equipment, um, and the type of sound deadening they were going to put in ceilings to absorb sound, keep it from, flowing out into the open common areas.
And it seemed to be successful.
I think it was because the building functions very well now and they can use it as a quiet area for the students as it was intended to do.
The other question I had for you too is, you know, I can't imagine the equipment in the food service areas are working nonstop 24/7, but it's a student center, and I've been around a bunch of them in my career
Mm-hmm.
where they're open at other times. So did you have to worry about having the equipment and everything kind of blocked off from areas so it could be closed, but yet the building is still open?
Yes. Yes, the operator was adamant that he wanted to be able to secure the food service areas when they were not in use. And then that uh, put it upon the architects to come up with a way of closing off the areas, our food service areas,
Mhm.
in a way that was aesthetically pleasing to them, but still functional
Yeah.
to keep kids from trying to uh, get into
Yeah.
a food service area to help themselves when things were not open.
And how were they able to do
And
that?
how
Was it, pulled
were they?
chains, the gates, or how were they able to come?
No, well, it was a variety of ways. There were some areas where we had a sliding barn door gate that came
Okay.
across a food service area. There were other areas where we had a pull across screen that would uh, come across a food service area. And there were other areas where there was a pull down gate. But
Okay.
again, they were all done with aesthetics in mind so that it didn't look cheap and tacky.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, another thing that I read about that I thought was interesting is Western Kentucky wanted one of the concept areas to be available to a rotating local pop-up store. So I'm curious how, as
Yes.
a consultant, you're able to plan for a kitchen area, if you will, or a serving area that you have no idea what the concept could be. It may change from month to month or year to year, depending on the pop up that comes in. So walk us through a little bit about, in your mind, when they tell you that, like, how are you trying to solve that problem for them?
That is a challenge because, I mean, as we know, that food service areas are typically designed to work with a menu.
Right.
And when you don't have a menu, you kind of have to give them almost a little bit of everything. You know, there are certain basics that most kitchens all have: combi ovens and or convection ovens. They have a range. They have fryers. And after that, it starts getting a little trickier because we don't know, is this pop up going to be an Asian cuisine? And are they
Right.
going to need to have woks? We kind of had to make some guesses on our part
Okay.
to give them the most flexible kinds of kitchen equipment that we could come up with at the time that was available on the market. I mean, I can't guarantee that every kind of esoteric little cuisine can be accommodated there. But I do think that all of the typical ones that you see on most college campuses can find uh, production equipment there to cook.
Nice. Oh, that I can't imagine. Like, we want you to design a kitchen, but we have no idea what it's going to be for, and it may change every year. So that's got to be crazy.
Yeah.
One of the things that the architect complimented you personally, and then also Cindy, about, which I really appreciate reading about when an architect says this, and that was the 3D designs you were doing for this. So everything was designed in 3D, Revit, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Um, and, we all know how important 3D design is now, but tell the listeners, somebody that maybe doesn't know what 3D designs are, kind of how much easier it is to work within it now, and especially with the architects, because as consultants, you're asked to do changes almost on a daily basis as it comes closer. So how does that work with 3D design, and why does it make your job easier?
Well, it makes the project easier. I don't think it makes my job per se easier, but it makes the project easier because the 3D designs that are created electronically can then be used with the architects and the engineers' designs so that they can spot problems with utilities that we need for our equipment
Right.
that might be clashing with other utilities that they have planned and other building structure.
Right.
So it made the design go much smoother and absolutely minimize the number of problems in the field when there is like oh boy, what do we do? Because we didn't know this was here.
Yeah. And better to find out in the 3D version versus the real life version.
Yes. Yes, because the 3D version lets them look at things with all of the structure and utilities moving around and in the, I guess, the direction that they need to go
Yeah.
to spot any conflicts.
Good. One of the, I just got a couple questions left, but I mean, what was the most enjoyable
Yeah.
aspect of working on this project for you?
I would say working with the team that we had, and it's not only the senior little people, but also the people from the university and the architects and their engineers. Everybody worked very well together, and we were just there to design something that was going to be a real crowd pleaser, but also one that gave the university what they were asking for, something that was going to grab the students' imagination. Because the building was kind of blah when we started. Yeah. The engineers and the architects took what was there and they really made it a showpiece.
Last question for you is, how can people find out more about you and Cine Little?
Obviously, they can look on the Cine Little website. We have a listing of, I believe, some of our current and past projects. They can find me on the website. Okay. I've done several other university projects, and they've all, I believe, turned out very, very well. So, yeah, look us up on the website. Everybody does that these days.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
an electronic world.
Well, Armand, that's all I've got for you today. I really appreciate, again, you taking the time to talk with us about the project, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Art of Culinary Spaces. We hope this conversation has sparked your creativity and inspired new ideas within the world of food service design and planning. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on all of our future podcasts. Stay tuned for our next episode when we explore another groundbreaking project and exceptional design from FCSI members that are transforming the culinary landscape.